Good day, everyone. As you can see behind me, we have that pile of drywall, and it is a lot smaller. It is a lot smaller because, bam, look at all this drywall. This is finally the drywall video. Through this video, I'm going to show you using the drywall hoist. So my first time using that was a little intimidating the first sheet, but then once you realize the drywall is not going to fall on you and crush you, it gets a lot easier. I'm going to show you how we cut out the pot lights. I'm going to show you how we cut out the outlets on both the ceiling and the wall. It's the same process either way. I'm going to show you how we measured the sheets, how we put the screws in, why we didn't use glue. I think those are most of the things I thought about before putting this up. I'm sure I'm missing some, and we'll go through those through the time lapse, but let me get the time lapse up and I'll begin talking you guys through all the steps and the prices and what I did. As far as a tool list to hang the drywall, we'll start off with the drywall hoist. This is the red lift that you see me using in the video. I would highly recommend this, whether doing this with 1 or 2 people. It's way easier to put the sheet of drywall on the lift it up in the air, and let it sit there while you drill it in, or use the rotozip to cut out the lights. The next thing we used was a drill. Others can use hammers if they're choosing to nail their drywall in. We screwed ours in. A razor knife to trim down the drywall, a rotozip to cut around the lights, the oscillating tool to cut out the outlets. You can also use a drywall knife to replace the rotozip, an oscillating tool, or a razor knife, and then a tape measure. For material, it was only drywall panels and the screws to hold them into place. If you never used a drywall hoist before, they're pretty simple to use. You can rent one from a local tool rental place, or you can buy your own. Rental cost is about $18 a day, or it was about $200 to buy one. You can break it down and store it in the size box I got it in. It comes with a pulley, and you wind the pulley up to lift the drywall panel in the air. The drywall panel also tilts, so if your ceiling is on an angle, it will automatically press against the ceiling. Or, if you see later in the video, we have to angle it up above the garage door railing. It was also very helpful in this case. Now, when going to actually hang the drywall panels, there were a couple questions I had in mind, such as where to hang them, how to hang them, and how to attach them. Where to hang them is we hung them perpendicular to the joists, so the joists are running left to right, and we hung the drywall perpendicular to that, and we also offset the drywall. So the first panel was almost a full sheet, and the second panel over to the left is a half sheet, and we alternated so the seams would be offset. For how to attach it, we had the vapor barrier on the ceiling, so that eliminated glue as an option. I also didn't want to go with glue because I heard a lot of people online that would lay down the glue and it would haze over or partially dry before they got it attached, rendering the glue useless. So what we did was we went with screws over nails. Now, when choosing screws, we needed to look up how far apart you needed to screw the screws in so that it would hold the drywall. We looked it up, and there's a website I'm going to link down in the description that was very helpful. We put the screws about 12 inches apart on the ceiling and about 16 inches apart on the walls. Alright, so the thing we're going to have to do several times is measure and cut for outlets while installing the drywall. So I want to show you how I'm doing that. On this example behind me, we have the outlet, and then we also have the box for the garage door opener. So I pick a side, I measure from that side for all the things I need to cut out. So when I need to cut out the garage door opener, I'll measure from that side. When I need to cut out the outlet, I'll measure from that side. I'll also do the same from the top or the bottom. So I'll pick the bottom to measure from the bottom of the drywall to the outlet, and from the bottom of the drywall to the box. So once I take those measurements, I'll transfer them to this sheet. So right now I have it laying in the same direction. It'll go up on the wall. Take the tape measure, put it over to the side. And so what I do is I put these 2 little notches here. So one here and one here. And I do the same when measuring from the bottom, from here and here. I put the straight edge along, take this, mark, do the same with all of them, and now I have the square I need to cut out. Since there's not much new to hanging the wall panels over hanging the ceiling panels, we'll jump into the list of what we're going to be using in the second part of the video to mud the walls. So for tools, this could be elaborate or simple as you need. I would recommend looking up different ways to mud drywall. There are tons of different tools you can use. We went the simple route. All we used was a mud pan, a trowel, and then you need something to sand it with. We used a hand sander and a rod sander. For materials, you need the joint compound or mud, you need the drywall tape, and then you'll need the sandpaper. We used a 120 grit to go over the light coat, and then we used a 220 grit to go over the final coat. All right, so as I'm hanging up the drywall, I'm gonna show you a couple screws I did. 2 of them are not good, 1 of them is good, and I'm gonna explain a little bit about why, or at least what I read online. All right, so good screws is this one right here. So it's indented a little bit, so you can mud over top of it, and then it doesn't break the paper. If you break the paper, then it's not really holding on to anything. It's just the drywall behind it, and that doesn't hold well. So bad examples are this one. It's too deep, and you can see the paper's broken. So it's past the paper, it's just in the drywall. That's not a good screw. This one also isn't ideal. So it's still holding on to some paper here. It looks like it has broken through the paper here, but this is because it went in at an angle instead of flat in. All right, I talked to you earlier about how to screw in a screw and when it isn't screwed in far enough. So now I'm gonna show you why it's bad. So we're filling all the screw holes. You can see the screws sunken in. It just fills over nicely. Whereas, there we go. This one isn't screwed in enough, so as you fill over, well, get some more. You get caught on the screw. So, just take it. Still not in enough. There we go. Now, fill it in. Much better. All right, so what we have here is our bucket of mud. We have a hammer drill, and then we have whatever this attachment is called. I'm sure you can use a bunch of different attachments, but we're gonna use this one. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna whip up the drywall or stir it up to make it nice and creamy. And how we're gonna do that is we're gonna add a little bit of water to it. And then we're going to start mixing. So for the first coat of drywall mud, what I'm going to call it is the tape coat. The purpose of this coat is to get the tape adhered to the wall using the mud. There are a couple different methods to do this, but what we chose to do is we laid down a light layer of mud where the seams are, and then we put the tape over it, and then we went over the tape to make sure the tape was stuck to the wall and there was drywall mud between the wall and the tape. In the next clip, you'll see a couple areas where I did not get enough mud in between the tape and the wall, and that caused bubbles, and I'll also show you how we fixed those in this scenario. This doesn't have to be a beautiful coat. This is just to get the tape on the wall. A difference I'll call out is whether you're doing this with the seams or the butt joints. So the seams are indented a little bit, so there's room for the tape to go down, mud to go over top, and it be completely flat. The butt joints are not, so you're gonna have to build up a little bit. The tape's gonna be higher than the wall, and then you're gonna have to mud over it in the upcoming coats. All right, so another thing I want to show you. Holy, well, my mask is tight. But the other thing I want to show you is, as a do-it-yourselfer, I don't always get the tape right. So around all the walls, Tom did the tape around all the walls. We didn't have to do this for any of that. I did the tape on the ceiling. There are other complaints about it, but it sometimes had bubbles. So if you look up here, you can see the tape runs right here, and what I did is I didn't get enough mud under here to adhere the tape to the drywall, so it bubbled up, and then what you can see is when the lights reflect off of it, a little bubble in the ceiling. So what you do is you take this, you cut it out, and you mud over it. So here we cut out these two. Now, over here, we did the same, and we already mudded over it once. So we're gonna have to mud over it again, maybe third time, sand it down, but it will be good afterwards. So I have that problem frequently, and then I had the opposite problem of putting too much in. But if you have that problem, that's one way you can fix it. The second coat of mud, I'm gonna call the fill coat. This is where you wanna hide the tape. So the goal here is to flatten it out if it's in a seam, or the butt joint is just to put enough mud over top of it so that you don't see the seam anymore. Now, the more experience you have, the less mud you can use to do this. When Tom did this, he laid down a light coat that worked out. It required very little sanding. Whenever I did this in my past projects, I couldn't get it right with the light coats. I went with a lot heavier of a coat, and that led to a lot more sanding, a lot more dust. The final result came out about the same, but I used a lot more mud in previous experience, where Tom has more experience and used less mud. Taking a break from sanding. I think you can actually see the mark on my face from this mask because I don't want to eat the drywall. But I took a break, and I want to show you guys the tools I'm using and what I'm trying to accomplish here when I'm sanding. So for tools, we have the extended sanding rod. I don't know if it's actually called that, but there's a sanding screen on the end, and you can just take it and run it against the ceiling to sand, so you can do it from the floor. We have the hand one, which you do the same thing, just by hand. This is equipped with a sanding screen as well. These are the drywall sanding screens. I'd recommend them. They last really long. We're also using 120 grit. And then this is just a piece of old sandpaper I had that is 120 grit that I'm using to get up in the corners and other places where I can't reach with these, and I didn't want to use another sanding screen. Now, for what I'm doing, it's pretty much no matter what coats I'm between, or what coats Tom's between, I'm trying to knock down the high spots and smooth in the edges with the drywall. So what I mean by that is, this spot up here, I still have left to do. This is a high spot, only a little bit, but still I need to go over that once or twice with the sandpaper and knock that down so you can't see that high spot. Gouges in here, those don't matter as much because he'll end up filling them as he goes back again. And then the corners here, what we want to do, or not corners, the edges, what we want to do on the edges is we want to make it so you can't really tell they're there. What I mean by that is you can see there's an edge here, but if you run your hand along and your eyes will be closed, you can't feel a lip between here. So that's what you want. At least that's what Tom told me he wanted, so that's what I'm doing, and this looks to be turning out really well. I've done drywall twice before. They've never come out with this little coats this clean, so I would say this way is pretty good. But if you have any other ways of doing it, leave it in the comments down below and we'll try that next time. For cost of this video, it's pretty simple. We only needed 4 supplies and just a lot of those supplies. So we needed sheets of drywall. I needed 54 sheets to get the job done. Each sheet was $14, so that was around $760 total. We needed drywall screws. We needed a pretty big box of those. $25 for the box of drywall screws. Mud, we needed 3 buckets of mud, and that got us just through. We ran out of mud in the last bucket doing the lights, so $25 a piece, totaling $75. And then we needed 2 rolls of tape. I think they're around $5 a piece, so we'll call that $10. So a total of $860, with tax on top of that probably came out to more $900. So for around $900, I drywalled the ceiling and walls of my garage. We have the final coat everywhere, and now we're ready to sand. So what I wanted to highlight here is how Tom did the lights. So we did all the seams going this way first, let them dry. Then came back, did the seams going this way, let them dry, and sanding in between every one. Last thing was up around the lights. Instead of just going over this way, he kind of went in a circle to smooth everything out. So now we should be able to sand. Third coat is done, get everything nice, and it'll be perfectly ready for paint. Now with this final sanding, this is where you want to pay a lot of attention. Where the previous sanding we used 120 grit, this sanding we used 220 grit, so it's a finer grit sandpaper and it should leave for a smoother finish. So what we want to pay attention to here is knocking down any high spots if there are any, and then feathering out the edges so that you can't really tell where the drywall mud begins and where it ends. And we're done with drywall. We got all the coats on, everything sanded down. It looks really good. In the past, it's looked really good, and then I painted it, and we see a bunch of imperfections. So make sure you guys subscribe to know when the painting video is out so you can see if we made any mistakes. That way, whenever you do your project, you know what to do, what not to do, what to watch out for. But thanks for watching. Let me know if you do anything different in the comments, and I'll see you next time.